Okay, this is going to be a crash course for dog lovers out there who have a dog who has impacted intestines for one reason or another, usually from ingestion of a foreign object. If you know what the object is, this only works on specific things. In this particular case, my dog ate a piece of artificial leather and it just jacked his system up. You could smell it coming out of him. You could smell it was toxic and that it made his whole body smell the same way. The piece of leather that we found that he had eaten, a part of it, smelled the same way. And so you could see that he was on the verge of dying from poison. So I'm going to show you, I myself am not a veterinarian, so I can't give you what you call medical advice for your dog, but this is something that you can do at home. Typically when you have a situation like that, they will try to, if it's recently ingested within the last few hours, they'll try to use something like Ipecac. I'm not sure if they use that on dogs exactly, but they'll use something similar to that inhibits food from going down the pyloric valve, the back valve of the stomach. It promotes vomiting. That's what Ipecac does in humans. I don't know if they use for dogs. They'll do that. And if that doesn't work, they'll try an enema from the backside and fill your dog full of water or a liquid of some sort to see if they can evacuate the impaction in the intestines. If that doesn't work, then they opt for surgery. They open up your dog, they cut into the intestines, they pull out the material, and then sometimes they'll just remove that piece of the intestine too, because if that intestine sits there under a high stress load, it can cause scarring, damage, and rot as well. So sepsis can occur from that situation, and so you need to do your best. If you choose not to go to a doctor, make sure your dog consistently pushes stuff out their back end. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to show you that facilitated in saving my dog's life when he was under those circumstances. I knew that if I took him to a vet, those were the three options, and I didn't want to. He's an older dog. This happened when he was about 10. I didn't want to take him to the vet, have him get intestinal surgery, have him remove a piece of the intestine just for him to try to recover in an old age and suffer along the way just to fucking die a month or two later. I would have rather just put him down myself at that point. And so those are kind of the options you end up with an older dog. And anyways, he's kicking ass now. He's perfectly fine. But this is what I did over the course of a couple weeks, maybe a week and a half. So I basically cut out anything that would be fibrous, that would clog up his system. You want to give him something that is in liquid form, that is going to be ground up in a blender. So we got a blender right here. There's a couple tricks that you can do for absorbing toxins. You can take activated charcoal, you grind that up in your blender with water, and you make a slurry. And then you would do something like you take it and put it in a syringe like this without the needle tip. And you put that in the corner of his mouth and face it towards the back of his mouth and squirt it down towards the back of his throat. It'll force him to swallow. Another thing is that if you do this and your dog starts vomiting, it means that he's not able to get the food through his digestive tract. And it means that he's rejecting the food back out through his body, through the front side, because he can't get anything through the back side. So you have to watch. If your input is the same as your output, it means that the impaction is allowing something through and pushing it through. And that means you got a chance to evacuate the impaction of whatever the material might be. I doubt this would really work on something like pocket change, or if they ate gravel, something like that. This would be like an impaction of a soft material or a semi-soft material, something that would pass through. So what I had done over the course of the week is I had fed him pumpkin, no sugar, just 100% pure pumpkin with chicken breast blended. And then I'd put either a squirt or two, a full syringe or two, in a meal, right? So that'd be what, 12 milliliters. So anywhere between 12 to 24 milliliters of hot coconut oil. So it was liquefied, or olive oil. And so that was his meals for that whole period of time. I would not recommend activated charcoal because it's got such an amount of fiber in it, or whatever you want to call it, material to there that could clog up his intestine. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get his food into his body, his or her food into his body, and get it so it goes around the impaction and starts to evacuate out the back end. And so, like I said, the input has to equal the output. And so you watch that over the course of the first few days. You make sure that he doesn't hold in his intestines more than what you're feeding him and what's evacuating out the back. One of the things I did, everybody that's a dog lover knows this. Their dog's got a favorite kind of grass. This is his favorite grass. He prefers crabgrass, thicker, rough stuff. So what I do is I take this stuff, I cut it up in about 1-inch pieces. I put it in the blender with a bunch of water. Take it, put it in the blender with a bunch of water. Grind it up real fine, and then I strain it out through a strainer so it's just basically green liquid. A lot of people don't know this, but the reason dogs eat grass is not just for the fiber, but it has to do with the chlorophyll and how it cleans out the intestinal tract. This works for us too. You can drink green stuff. That's why they will take something like wheatgrass and they'll make wheatgrass shots out of it. It's also a cleansing agent. And so what I would do is I'll take this syringe like this. Like I said, take the needle off of it, fill it full of a couple squirts of this, and then I would run that down his throat. I'd force the syringe towards the back of his throat on the side of his mouth and squirt it in and force him to ingest the chlorophyll water. And then there's microfibers in this, so it's fibrous as well, which is beneficial. On a very, very small fine scale, fine fiber is good because it'll help push around the intestine. But this will decrease the inflammation of the intestine from the injury caused by the sepsis or the toxicity of whatever was ingested. Because when you have an intestine that is not flowing freely, it has a tendency of causing like sludge and sepsis and things like that cause inflammation and injury and damage to the intestinal walls and the blood vessels and things like that. And so why coconut oil is so good as well is that it has the tendency of being antimicrobial, so antibacterial, antifungal, and it also is a light oil, and it burns in the body of a human being more like a carbohydrate. And so you're giving your dog carbohydrates through the method of an oil. And dogs they're omnivorous, but they're inherently carnivorous, being predators. And so when you give them a carbohydrate, you kind of have to be careful. There's some carbohydrates you can't really give them. Pumpkin's really good for them because it's high fiber, and it's also a squash, which makes it so their insulin level doesn't spike. It's a slower digesting carbohydrate. Same thing with coconut oil. It's a light coconut oil. It runs through their body fast, so it doesn't just sit there and make them fat. So what I do is, like I said, I take a squirt or two of this coconut oil, put it in a meal with their pumpkin chicken breast, run it through the blender, and then I would squirt that into his mouth with this. And I would try to feed him as much as I could in a short period of time before he started essentially rejecting me giving it to him. And then what I would do in between meals is I'd give him 2 to 3 squirts of this stuff, this green stuff, and then I would heat up either coconut oil or olive oil to about room temperature. And then I would take 2 or 3 of these tubes and I would squirt that down his throat as well. So in between meals, he would be getting the chlorophyll for a cleansing agent mixed with the antimicrobial oil. So for dog lovers who don't want to take their dog to a vet and have them run through the system that they have created, the medical system that has to do with Ipecac evacuating the toxin out the stomach of the dog, which I actually consider that to be a good option if you can catch it in time. Most of the time people can't get a dog into the vet within a few hours to allow that to occur. So that's not really a viable option. And then the other 2 options is basically surgery or an enema. And either time they have to put them under anesthesia to do that, which is also bad because a dog, this happens to people too, anesthesia under unusual circumstances can just cause the death of a person. So sometimes an anesthesiologist might make a mistake, or a person might be susceptible to problems that occur from the anesthetic itself. And so I try to avoid putting my animals under anesthesia at all costs, under any circumstance. And this is what I would do If I was in a situation where I had a dog that had an impacted intestinal tract, I would consider using these options, because it worked like wonders for my dog. After a week and a half, and he recovered, he's back to full recovery, and his intestines are working perfectly fine. Matter of fact, his digestive tract looks like it's working better than it did before the circumstances had occurred. Here's a bonus. This is called cleavers. It is a indigenous plant of the United Kingdom. It is a wild weed all over the United States. It's basically gone global. You'll know what it is because it's got a square stem. It looks like this. You can kind of see how the leaf structure is built on the stem. So it's in the sage family. Most sages out there are somewhat edible or usable by mankind. So I would take this in consideration. This actually produces caffeine inside of the seeds. You can make a tea out of the leaves. It tastes like cucumber, and my dog loves the shit out of it. He chooses to eat this over just about anything else. Crabgrass, of course, first, but this is a close second. I can just hand him this and he'll eat it. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. And with him, he's got such a strong nose since he's a hunting breed. I kind of just let him sniff around and see what he wants as far as greens go out in the wild. And I'll do research on it if he wants to eat it before I know what it is. See if it's okay for the animals to eat it, or dogs, generally speaking. And then I hand it over to him. So he's been eating this for years and he loves it, and it seems to be working really good on his stomach too. It's also a cleansing agent. This is one of those plants that has a lot of different properties that have been used since medieval times. But anyways, this is kind of a cool survival weed that you can find around. But like I said, kind of a rare feature is a square stem, and also the way the leaf structure is. You can't really miss it. It's sticky as hell too. You can just throw it up to your clothes and it'll stick. Between those three types of characteristics, it's kind of hard to mistake identifying this thing. Anyways, if you got a dog and you need some type of alternative way to take care of them under extenuating circumstances, I would suggest looking at this, considering it as an option, and potentially trying it for yourself. All risks in consideration. I myself am not a veterinarian, but I've had to do things like puncture a hematoma in my dog's ear without anesthetic and things like that, and take care of them under the circumstances of having an injured intestine, and been successful in all of the things that I've had to do for him without taking him to the vet. Anyways, I hope this helps for all you dog lovers out there, and just take in consideration if you get into a situation like this to try this option before you take them to the vet.